Mike Detillier joining us after a big LSU win. They ended up blowing the doors off of Ole Miss in the second half. 45-20, coming off back-to-back big wins in Gainesville and then hosting Ole Miss. And so the debate today is LSU a legit contender or pretender in the SEC West? Boy, they look good. Well, after the first quarter and a half-ish on Saturday. We welcome in Mike Detillier, WWL Radio TV New Orleans. He joins us on the Yuengling Lager guest line, and it's brought to you by Sound and Communication, soundcomav.com. Sound and Communication, soundcomav.com. All right, Mike D., after that performance on Saturday, and LSU gets to host Bama in 2 weeks, night game, is LSU an SEC West contender or pretender today?
You'd have to say they're a contender based on how they played the last couple weeks. Again, it's part of the discussion we've had it over the last couple of days about, can this team possibly get in SEC championship? And, that there is that possibility. I don't think it's going to happen. But the big change has been watching the development of their offensive line with two freshman tackles and a freshman tight end and Jaden Daniels, because you really see him sort of making the curve from a passing standpoint. He's the best running quarterback I've ever seen at LSU, the best. His speed, he's a rare athlete, long, lean guy who can really get up the field and fast. And Ole Miss saw it, his speed, and he presents quite a problem in that area. He did not trust his receivers early in the season, and you could tell. He did not throw the football to them unless they were high school open. So they had to be really open for him to trust them. And Brian sort of got on him and good about it, that, hey, listen, you got to trust these guys. And every one of them's going to play in the NFL. Come on, you got to give these guys a shot at this point. And I did the numbers. I did post-game television for CBS and locally. And the last three games, if you count Tennessee, Florida, and Ole Miss, his completions, 73% of them went to wide receivers. In the games before that, only 53.
Wow.
So now I think he has found a little bit of a niche here that, hey, these guys can make some plays for me. And that's a big jump, because he was really getting the ball more out in the flat to the running back or the tight end, and not so much to the wide receivers. But the last three games, he's been able to get that accomplished to the receivers, and it's a remarkable growth. And watching him, it sort of popped in my head. His comp would be, we saw this sort of move with Jalen Hurts when he went from Alabama to Oklahoma and now to the Eagles. And we're starting to see it now with Jaden Daniels. And he's sort of college football's version of Jalen Hurts. Different style runners, because Hurts is a power runner with speed. Daniels is a speed guy. It's just, he can really motor downfield. But you see the great improvement, similar to Hurts, in the passing game. I think people forget he was an experienced starting quarterback when he hit LSU. He started a lot of games at Arizona State. It wasn't like he just started one or two. He had some experience under his belt. But it was just him getting the rapport down with his wideouts and trusting them, and people like Kayshawn and Malik Neighbors and Jeray Jenkins and Kyron Lacey and Brian Smith. Those guys, they're going to play in the NFL one day. Every one of them. It's really the strength of their team offensively at wide receiver. And I think it's something that Brian sort of has preached quite a bit to. And you've seen quite a transformation in him. Despite the fact what happened against Tennessee, which was a complete blowout, Daniels really was the one guy that made plays for him on offense. But everybody
he's
else
so
kind of
dangerous,
wet the diaper.
Mike Detillier on the Out of Bounds show. It looks, he's growing up. Like you said, he's still got plenty of time to develop. Because LSU can move it on the ground and through the air, I think they have an opportunity to give Alabama fits, because there's not many teams in the league this year that can do that. And I'm not saying he's Peyton Manning through the air, but he's getting better. And his ability to run, along with the running backs that they have, like you said, I really think that they can stretch Bama both horizontally and vertically. That's kind of the way this offense is trending, Mike D.
I want to see how well they match up with them up front. They were able to match up very well against Florida's front and Ole Miss's front. Alabama's a little different defensively. And can they slow down Will Anderson from being a difference maker? So you've got a young offensive line. And again, when you're talking about two freshman tackles you're starting, and Ole Miss has the same scenario, and a freshman tight end, you sort of wonder from week to week about the offensive line play. It's Brian's wheelhouse. It's something he has spoke about almost from day one of watching that development up front, and it's dramatically different from what we saw in the first game of the season against Florida State, where there was tremendous pressure on Jaden Daniels. But now you see a lot of designated runs for him, and he's a little bit more patient in the pocket than earlier in the year. But, man, when he pulls it down and takes off, he's deceivingly really fast. Because you just take a look at him and say, oh, he's not moving that fast. But yeah, he really is. He is really motoring. And I heard it from so many of the LSU players on defense was that, man, you thought you had an angle on him, and then he pulls away from you. And it'll be interesting to see how LSU matches up against Bryce Young secondary-wise. The one area I think even Nick would probably admit to they haven't reached the same heights as maybe we've seen over the last 5 or 6 years is in the receiving corps at Alabama. That was always, that guy, he's a first-round pick guy. And, and sometimes they had multiple first-round pick guys you had to go up against. You look at Alabama today, there's a lot of hit and miss at receiver. Now, Gibbs is going to give you a lot of trouble. And I've said this before. This is nothing against Robinson at Texas. But on my board, Jahmyr Gibbs would be the top running back in college football if I'm looking to draft because of what he can do as a runner and a receiver. And, again, that's nothing against Robinson, who I think is a really good football player. But, man, you look at Gibbs and that speed and that ability to get away from people and the matchup situations that he sort of possesses, he's become the straw that turns the drink for him because, Bryce is now looking for him because he doesn't have that wide out today that maybe in years past if you had a Jalen Waddle or Henry Ruggs or, you can kind of go on and on of the receivers that were there. Gibbs has become the main factor as a runner and a receiver. And how well LSU can slow him down. and also Harold Perkins. And that was the one freshman when you talk to upperclassmen at LSU, they were like, there's a superstar here. It's that guy. It's Perkins. And he's saw a lot of playing time, and then at some games, not quite as much. But, man, you watch him play. Bo, I've seen a lot of freshman linebackers at LSU. He's the best freshman linebacker I've ever seen.
Wow. He's big time.
Now, Devin White wasn't crazy about playing linebacker as a freshman. I interviewed him before the season started, and his deal was, hey, you got to talk to the coach, see if I can play running back. And I'm like, hey, Devin, they got Fournette and Geis here. Dude, if you want to hit the field, you better play linebacker. And so they really kind of had to convince him that was his spot. Now, he wasn't like that as a sophomore. He had bought in. But as a true freshman, he hadn't totally bought in to that. Patrick Queen came in here. He was a running back that they were converting to linebacker. And so Debo Jones, he was 3 years at LSU, and Les had him as a backup linebacker into his senior year. So when you think about those type guys, now Quan Alexander came in, and he started 4 or 5 games as a true freshman. No, Quan could play, but he had a lot of injuries. You look at Harold Perkins and how dominant he can be in his ability to run the field. He can drop back in coverage as a pass rusher coming off the edge. He is something special. He's worth every nickel they paid in name, image, likeness. Put it to you that way.
Mike Detillier on the Yuengling Lager guest line, and you're listening Out of Bounds on 105.9 The Zone, ESPN. What about Matt House, defensive coordinator for LSU? He has now shut down Mississippi State and Ole Miss in the second half after both teams got out to pretty big leads on the Tigers, Mike.
Matt was a guy, and I knew him through Pete Jenkins, and, Pete helped mentor some of those defensive linemen at Kentucky in the past, and so Matt was there. And he told me, Mike, he's a really good coach, good fundamental coach. He's a good adjustment coach. This team on defense has talent. They're awfully thin, okay, but they got some talent on the defensive side of football. Whole new secondary. That part no one knew about because, they lost their top 4 corners. 2 went to the NFL and 2 made business decisions. And then the safety positions sort of been rerouted also. But his schematics have been really good, and they've bought into it. They really, really have. And you can see, and they lost their top defensive lineman first game, I think the third play of the first game, in Mason Smith. So Matt's done a really good job here. Bright young guy who I think one day will get a chance to be a head coach in college football. I think he's that good. He really is. Does a nice job. But I think Ole Miss threw him off track early because I think LSU felt like most people that they would come out running the football against LSU. And Jackson Dart was hot early. He was 9 of 10. And they threw the football quite a bit. And then he cooled off. They were able to get some pressure on him. And Matt, I think, sometimes you'd rather be a little bit lucky than good. Jackson Dart missed Jonathan Mingo twice when he was beyond high school open. I mean, Mingo was running free downfield, not once, twice, and he missed on those shots. But that interception by Joe Fouché in the end zone, to me, was the game changer because Ole Miss was looking to score. And Fouché said after the game, he had saw that coverage before. He had saw that play, and he put himself in a position to make that kind of one-handed interception. But he said they had went over it quite a bit, that when they get down the goal line, they were going to run that play.
All right, so they take a week off, get ready for Bama, and wouldn't you say, even though LSU always has incredible talent, um, Brian Kelly is a little bit ahead of schedule for year one?
Yeah, I would think he has. I thought they'd be an 8-4 team, but now if you look at how the schedule plays out, and let's say they lose to Alabama, and look what they have to finish it off. A&M, Arkansas, and was it Alabama, Birmingham? You got a chance to get 9 games. Mm-hmm. You know, and this is he inherited, but this is the new world of college football. Probably 45 players, and then everybody else was new. It was freshmen and transfer people that he brought in. It is the new world of college football. Lincoln Riley's got 53 new players at USC. 53. You look at what's happening with Billy Napier, it's 41 at the University of Florida. It's what happens when you make a coaching change. Some guys, well, if my coach ain't here, I'm leaving. And so they decide to leave. But Brian's got them buying in. And the last couple of weeks certainly give you hope. Now, I couldn't have told you that after the Tennessee game.
Sure.
That was no indication this team would play that good the last 2 weeks. And he made a comment, and I always listen because I think the one thing, similar to Coach O, is that they tell you something without telling you. And he made the comment, hey, we're going to have some real good days down the line, and we're going to have some difficult days also. But we got to fight through it. And this is now all about developing talent. And he kind of repeated it, not once, twice. He sort of repeated it. And to go on the road in Gainesville to win, he's the only coach in LSU history to beat Auburn and Florida on the road the same year. Now,
wow.
I'll be honest with you. Until I heard that, I would have never guessed that.
Me neither.
And then you come back and you put together this kind of performance against Ole Miss, who was riding high. But I think bottom line is, I really believe they thought Ole Miss would try to run the football more against them. They didn't say it in the locker room, but you could kind of tell that I think they believed that Ole Miss would try to control the football a little bit more running the football than throwing it.
Where do you think we're going? Let's switch gears. Mike Detillier on the Out of Bounds show in the Yuengling Lager guest line. Mike, man, this is trending the wrong way at Texas A&M. Evidently, they're suspending some players. They're already thin on the offensive line. Could be great timing for Ole Miss going into College Station. Where's this headed with Jimbo Fisher?
And not good. Put it to you that way. No, when you pay in that kind of money, and no matter how you put it, that there was, you don't all of a sudden jump to being number one in recruiting when you had never been in that conversation before. And listen, it was legal. Hey, that's just the way the NCAA is set up today, that you can do it. But when you do that, and it's an article I wrote before the season started, the guy with the most pressure on him in college football is Jimbo Fisher. Man, they ain't going to accept 8-9 wins at Texas A&M now.
He may go 6-6, Mike.
He's lucky to get a winning season today. And you could tell this sort of looks like the final days of him at Florida State in a lot of ways. That the team sort of looks the same. They have not responded to Jimbo. They got talent, immense talent at A&M. That's the big difference. They didn't have that type of talent at Florida State at the end. They got immense talent, young talent at A&M. And now all those young freshmen are like, wait a minute, I didn't come here for this. I didn't come here for this stuff. And it could go south real quickly. No, Ole Miss has got that opportunity. Believe me. The one thing I do know with Jimbo, though, man, he's got more lives than a cat. I mean, you can flip him backwards, and no matter what, somehow, some way, he lands on his feet, and he's been like that throughout his coaching career. Just when you count him out, he comes up with a game or two to kind of pull himself out. I thought he did that earlier in the year, but to see the performance against South Carolina was baffling to me.
Woo!
Really, and that's not nothing against South Carolina, but that's more on Texas A&M, that they seem to be a very unfocused and unenergized football team.
Mm-hmm.
They really, really do. And now it's, what do you do with him at A&M? And the money people at A&M, what if we got to buy him out to get rid of him?
They'll do it.
They wouldn't blink in a second to do it. And I go back to that thought process of the summer. Yeah, you started a fight with the big guy, okay? And so now, once you get in the ring, then everybody else was going to take their shot at you too. It just wasn't Saban in Alabama. It was you up against the world, and now everybody's going to take their shot at you. And could Jimbo survive that? And you look at this team today, man, they don't play with any energy. They're being out executed every time they play. And with that type of talent, you should be winning and winning big, and you're not. And he still does not have the quarterback situation settled.
No, and he doesn't know what to do there. Mike?
And that, I think, is the big issue at A&M today.
No,
and you look at the teams that are winning, and I think in time, Jackson Dart's going to be a good quarterback.
I do
at
too.
Ole Miss. If Jaden Daniels decides to stay another year at LSU, he sort of changes things there too. Now, again, he's going to have that choice at the end of the year. What has made Tennessee who they are? Hendon Hooker.
Oh, no question. Mike, I got 10 seconds. Who wins, Ole Miss or A&M?
I like Ole Miss in this game. I really do. I think Ole Miss wins it, but I think it's really, really close.
We'll leave it there. He is Mike Detillier, WWL Radio TV New Orleans. He joined us on the Yuengling Lager guest line. Have a super week, buddy. Thanks, Mike D. The show is brought to you by Sound and Communications. SoundcomAV.com. Top quality audio visual. That's right. They provide leading edge audio and visual for churches, businesses, and sports facilities. Sound and Communications. SoundcomAV.com.